Hey YouTube, this is Esplin227, and I'm going to talk about censorship. Not how it's good or how it's necessary. I'm going to come at it from a different angle because I've been thinking about something that I haven't heard anyone else mention. Um, I have, I'd say it's a hypothesis, but it's more of an observation about the unifying factor in what we censor and what we don't censor. And we have, there's the bad guy justification thing that people talk about as to why violence is okay because we're okay with hurting someone we disagree with. That really doesn't explain enough for me. There's the Victorian age crap about sex. Again, that doesn't explain enough of the phenomena, enough of the aversion we have. I think it comes down to something very basic and very biological. I think it comes down to probability. Even in cultures where they're uncomfortable with a different set of things than we are, it still falls into this paradigm. And I think you'll agree with me when you hear. And I've scoured media. I looked at books, I looked at movies, I looked at video games. I cannot find one hypothesis that more clearly explains all of the issues than this one. All other sub issues and sub reasons like Victorian age blah 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 fall into this quite nicely. Um, and a good hypothesis, a good theory explains all the various, all the variables, all the questions, rather than raising more questions than it answers. So if you think you have a better explanation, by all means correct me. But here goes. Probability. Profanity, sexuality, drug use, violence. That is the order at which we find things unacceptable. Try saying the F word anywhere in a movie, at any point. You will almost certainly get an R rating, especially if the F word is meant in the action, as in fucking someone sexually. Then is fucking someone over, and lastly, an utterance of the F word. Um, in that order is the least accepted things. You will get an F rating, even if your movie has no violence, no sex, and no drug use. You can put it right next to another movie that has all those things. But if that other movie doesn't have the F word, they very well may get away with a PG-13 rating. Why is this? Probability. It's very likely that your children are going to curse, especially if they see it on TV. I'm not that bothered by that. When I was little, I cursed like a sailor. Um, and I turned out alright. I was always polite to adults. Um, Parents always liked me, but I cursed like a sailor. And it probably is because I was allowed to watch more adult stuff. So parents' fears are warranted if it bothers them that their children curse. If your children watch movies and TV where there's a lot of cursing, they're going to curse more. So because of that, not because of how much it bothers us, but simply because of the likelihood, it seems to be one of the least accepted things. Sexuality. You're it's a little less likely than cursing, and in fact, it's a lot less likely. But most kids will experiment sexually at some point. It's just gonna happen. It's natural for some kids, they do it a little too early. For some kids, they're not given enough opportunity to explore their sexuality, so they become a little bit obsessed with it in their later teens, which is not healthy either. Um, But if you show a tit in a movie, you're more likely to get an R rating than if you show drug use or violence. Um, Victorian age attitudes do affect how a country feels about sex, but that still falls into this paradigm. Here's why. In Europe, they're more okay with that. But that's because they're actually more okay with children and teenagers exploring their sexuality. So logic dictates that they're going to be more okay with that being in a movie. Remember, it has to do with the probability that that thing is going to happen. If that thing's going to happen and it doesn't bother them, then it's a non starter. Drug use. Drug use is even more accepted. Um, it's very unlikely that your kids are going to do drugs. They may try weed at some point, but most kids are not going to do heroin. Most kids are not going to do meth, and because these acts are inherently harmful, not weed, that's why they're probably going to do it. You cannot show them doing the drugs without showing the negative side effects. Sometimes the negative side effects are the thing you're trying to get. Feeling like really jittery, feeling crazy, speaking really. These are all things that you look and you're like, I don't want to be like that, or I do want to be like that. But either way, it's very unlikely. Your kid is not going to watch a movie about someone mainlining heroin into their eyeball and do drugs. That's probably why you can have an entire movie about drugs. Comedies frequently get a PG-13. Even if there's a whole bunch of drugs, and even violence, as long as they're not sex or cursing, they're probably gonna get away with the PG-13. I don't see why they wouldn't. Um, Parents are not as worried about that. They're more worried than they should be, but nowhere near as uncomfortable as they are with sex and paranoid they are about profanity. And then there's violence. You're not going to get raped. You're not going to get murdered. You're not going to get assaulted. Why can I say that with such certainty or confidence? The rates of those things are incredibly low for a country of like, what, 400 million people. It's just not going to happen. Your kid's not going to get kidnapped. If your kid has, I'm sorry. I'm hedging my bets. That's how unlikely it is. That I can literally hedge my bets and bet that my entire YouTube audience, even if it was 3 times the size, has never had their child kidnapped. So parents, not because they're okay with people getting hurt and not okay with people making love, simply because they know there's a very small chance that their kid is going to watch The Godfather and then join the mafia. There's very little chance their kid is going to play Grand Theft Auto and then start mowing down hookers. It's just not going to happen. Um, when things like the Columbine shooting happen, we actually do become more uncomfortable with violence. That's an evolutionary thing. Our brain, our subconscious now sees that it's a little bit more likely. So we're a little bit less comfortable with it. We find it a little bit less acceptable. I literally cannot find any paradigm where this doesn't apply. Let's take Rwanda or something. There are a lot of third world countries where violence is very likely. But they're still okay with violence. Here's why. Violence is very likely. They're not as uncomfortable to it. They're used to it. Some people carry around AK-47s. You know what I mean? Like it's par for the course there. That's not to say they're okay with being harmed, just that they accept violence on its face. It's part of their life. There's nothing they can do about it. So they're a matter of fact with violence. So I think this covers pretty much everything. If there's more, I'll make another video. But tell me, do you agree? Do you have a hypothesis that better explains the phenomena of censorship? If you do, definitely comment, or they took away video responses. But yeah, until next time, until my next video, try to make the world a better place, and I will too.